At the tender age of 26, the decision to purchase my own home was not just a mere transaction, it was a monumental leap towards adulthood and autonomy. Having spent nearly 8 years cohabiting with various housemates, the prospect of finally having a space to call my own filled me with both excitement and trepidation. And so, armed with a sense of adventure and a newfound sense of responsibility, I embarked on a journey that would lead me to a quaint town nestled amidst the rolling hills and verdant landscapes of the countryside. This town, with its smaller population and fewer buildings, offered a stark departure from the hustle and bustle of city life. Here, the neighborhoods were not defined by towering skyscrapers or bustling streets, but rather by the expansive fields and verdant forests that surrounded them. Amidst this tranquil backdrop, I discovered the ideal residence, a modest home nestled in a wooded enclave, conveniently located just a short distance from the town's charming market square. The day of my move was a flurry of activity as I loaded boxes upon boxes into the rented van, each one filled with memories and the promise of a fresh start. As I navigated the winding country roads that led to my new home, a sense of anticipation bubbled within me, tempered only by the nagging sense of uncertainty that lingered in the back of my mind. My new abode greeted me with an exhilarating and unsettling sense of solitude. Surrounded by towering trees and the gentle rustle of leaves, I felt as though I had stepped into a world of my own, a world where time seemed to slow down and the worries of the outside world faded into oblivion. Yet, amidst the serene beauty of my surroundings, there lurked an underlying sense of unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, that somewhere, amidst the forest shadows, unseen eyes were following my every move. It was against this backdrop of newfound solitude that I encountered my first neighbor, a middle-aged man with a warm smile and a friendly demeanor. His sudden appearance on my doorstep caught me off guard, but his jovial manner quickly put me at ease. Introducing himself as my new neighbor, he extended a hand of friendship, welcoming me to the neighborhood with open arms. Yet, even as we exchanged pleasantries, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. There was a certain hesitancy in the man's demeanor, a fleeting glimpse of something hidden beneath the surface that left me feeling unsettled. As the day wore on and the sun began to set, a sense of foreboding descended upon me. The once familiar surroundings now seemed cloaked in shadow, every nook and cranny shrouded in darkness. It was amidst this eerie silence that the first signs of trouble began to emerge, a sharp bang that echoed through the stillness of the night, sending a shiver down my spine. As I peered through the peephole, I saw the same man from earlier, his features contorted with rage as he pounded on the door with an almost desperate fervor. With each passing moment, his demands for entry grew louder and more insistent, creating a sense of the walls of my home collapsing around me. With trembling hands, I reached for the phone, dialing the emergency number with a sense of urgency that bordered on panic. Yet, even as I waited for help to arrive, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, that this was only the beginning of a nightmare from which I might never awaken. In the days that followed, as the initial shock of the incident began to fade, I found myself haunted by a sense of lingering unease. Though life in the countryside offered a sense of peace and tranquility, it also harbored its own share of danger just beyond the safety of my front door. And so, as I navigated the uncertain terrain of my new surroundings, I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay hidden amidst the shadows of the forest, what other terrors awaited me in the darkness of night.
The journey seemed interminable as I pressed onward through the night, the empty roadway stretching endlessly before me. Every few seconds, I found myself glancing at the GPS, desperately hoping that the anticipated arrival time would somehow magically shrink. It had been a grueling 15-hour drive, fraught with danger, during which I had only stopped for essential sustenance and fuel. My job had necessitated this relocation, Yet despite the long hours spent behind the wheel, I hadn't even had a chance to catch a glimpse of my new abode. Eventually, I reached the familiar highway exit that marked the entrance to my hometown. The darkness of the night obscured much of my surroundings, but even in the dim light, I could discern that this place was not quite like the one I had left behind. As I drove through the familiar streets, I was struck by the sight of locally owned shops and businesses, their lights dimmed or entirely extinguished at this late hour. There was an eerie stillness that hung in the air, casting a pall over the neighborhood. Pulling up to my new residence, I parked on the deserted street and stepped out of the car, eager to finally lay eyes on the place that would be my home for the foreseeable future. The exterior appeared much like any other house on the block, but it was the interior that held the true promise of what lay ahead. Inserting the key I had received days earlier into the lock, I turned it expectantly, but to my dismay, the door remained stubbornly closed. Frowning in confusion, I pressed against the door, half expecting it to give way, but it remained resolutely shut. It was then that I noticed a peculiar sensation. The door seemed to yield slightly under my pressure. With a sudden realization, I grasped the handle and pushed harder, and to my surprise, the door slid open smoothly, revealing the darkened interior beyond. Using the feeble light of my phone, I ventured inside, my footsteps echoing hollowly in the empty house. Despite the lack of electricity, I could make out the vague outlines of my belongings, hastily deposited by the movers earlier that day. A pang of guilt washed over me as I realized that they had likely left the apartment unlocked in their haste. As I explored the rooms, I found the downstairs to be relatively unremarkable, albeit somewhat dated. It was when I ascended the creaky staircase to the second floor that things took a more ominous turn. The hallway stretched out before me, lined with closed doors, each one holding its own secrets. I approached the first door and pushed it open tentatively, revealing a small, musty room with signs of water damage creeping across the walls and ceiling. Moving on to the next room, I found more of the same, a pervasive sense of neglect that seemed to permeate every corner of the house. It was when I reached the end of the hallway that I encountered something truly unsettling, a single door standing slightly ajar, with a faint light spilling out from within. My heart pounded in my chest as I cautiously pushed the door open, my phone held aloft to illuminate the darkness. What I saw inside made my blood run cold, a figure lurking in the shadows, their eyes gleaming with malice as they stared back at me. With a gasp, I stumbled backwards, my mind reeling with fear and disbelief. Without a second thought, I turned and fled down the stairs, the echo of my footsteps mingling with the pounding of my heart. Outside, I paused for a moment, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I struggled to make sense of what I had just witnessed. With trembling hands, I dialed 911, my voice trembling as I recounted the events that had transpired. As I waited for the police to arrive, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched and that unseen eyes were following my every move. When the officers finally arrived and began their search of the house, I watched anxiously from the roadside, praying that they would find nothing amiss. To my relief, they emerged some time later, their expressions grim as they confirmed that the house had indeed been inhabited, despite its outward appearance of abandonment. It was a chilling revelation, one that filled me with a sense of unease that would linger long after that fateful night.
3 years ago, my life took an unexpected turn as I made the decision to uproot myself and settle into a new home, a small haven tucked away in a neighborhood with a notorious reputation. Despite its proximity to my previous abode, this part of town was unfamiliar territory to me, known more for its crime statistics than its sense of community, compounded by financial constraints. My options for housing were limited, and I found myself navigating the complexities of relocation with a sense of trepidation. The day of the move unfolded with a quiet solemnity, devoid of the usual hustle and bustle that accompanies such endeavors. With minimal assistance and a heavy heart, I embarked on the arduous task of transferring my possessions from the confines of a U-Haul truck to the barren rooms of my new dwelling. The absence of any welcoming committee or friendly faces left me feeling isolated, like a solitary figure amidst the desolate landscape of my new surrounding. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the empty streets, I found myself grappling with a sense of foreboding that seemed to permeate the very air around me. It was in this atmosphere of uncertainty that the first signs of trouble emerged, heralded by the appearance of a lone figure standing outside my window. A young man, his features obscured by the veil of darkness, stood motionless in the dim glow of the streetlights, his presence a silent reproach to the quiet solitude of the neighborhood. His gaze, fixed upon the facade of my new abode, sent a shiver down my spine, igniting a primal instinct within me to seek shelter from the unknown. Summoning what little courage I possessed, I ventured downstairs to confront the intruder, my heart pounding in my chest with each tentative step. Yet as I flung open the door and stepped outside, the space before me lay empty, devoid of any trace of the mysterious figure who had stirred such unease within me. Shaken but undeterred, I returned to the task at hand, determined to forge ahead despite the lingering sense of disquiet in the air. As night descended and exhaustion weighed heavily upon my weary limbs, I sought solace in the familiarity of my makeshift bedroom, seeking refuge from the uncertainties that awaited me beyond its walls. Yet, even as I succumbed to the embrace of sleep, a nagging sense of unease lingered at the edge of my consciousness, a silent reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. It was in the dead of night, amidst the oppressive silence of my new home, that the first signs of trouble emerged. The muffled sounds of movement, faint and indistinct at first, gradually grew louder, echoing through the empty halls with a chilling clarity. With each passing moment, the sense of dread that had enveloped me intensified, fueling a desperate urge to uncover the source of the disturbance. Summoning every ounce of courage I possessed, I ventured out into the darkness, my senses on high alert as I navigated the labyrinthine corridors of my new abode. What awaited me beyond the safety of my bedroom door was a scene straight out of a nightmare. Furniture overturned, boxes scattered haphazardly across the floor, and the unmistakable signs of forced entry etched into the walls. All evidence of an intruder's presence lurking in the shadows just beyond my reach. Panic surged through me as I grappled with the enormity of the situation, my mind racing with a myriad of unanswered questions and fearful conjectures. In the moments that followed, I left my home and sought safety in the outside world, grappling with the unsettling truth that someone had violated my newfound sanctuary. Yet even as I sought solace in the arms of law enforcement, the mystery of that fateful night remained unsolved, leaving me haunted by the lingering specter of the unknown. To this day, the memory of the enigmatic figure who stood outside my window remains etched in my mind, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets of that ominous night. And as I gaze upon the walls that once harbored a clandestine intruder, I am reminded of the fragility of safety and the unsettling truth that some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved.